Okay, so Vic, what we're looking at here is Watchful, and Watchful has been around eight 8 years now.
What are we? We're 2020. Yeah, 8 years. That's right. 8 years in a month, I think. Technically, we launched in May of 2012.
So I'm going to make a big possible claim about Watchful. Was it the first Joomla SaaS service? The first like kind of software as a service platform built for Joomla?
I think for site maintenance, it was the first to launch. I'm not sure when others were kind of in the works. Um, but yeah, I think it was the first to launch. There are other SaaS services unrelated to site maintenance, I think, that existed. I know if you remember back in your prior involvement to Joomla Shack, Steve, there was a site template initiative by one of your predecessors. I don't think that really got too far, but it was kind of log in, design your template, and download it. So that technically a SaaS service, but site maintenance, I think, yeah, we were the first to launch.
So what does it mean to run a software as a service platform based on Joomla? What how is it set up? Are you running everything on Joomla? Do you have some external apps as well?
I mean, that's a really great question. I could have actually shared with you another document that kind of has our whole platform laid out, but it's kind of evolved. When it started, it was a Joomla component exclusively because it started out as a Joomla self-run, self-installed, self-hosted component. So its basics
Oh,
was running on top of Joomla. Do you remember
uh,
that?
I remember there was something called like J monitoring or something. It was an extension you could install on your site. Like
Correct.
you'd have one master site and you could connect it to multiple subsites.
Correct.
I
Correct.
think I remember that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a lot,
So
10 years ago maybe.
Wow.
yeah, a little
Yeah.
longer. Yeah. And so it evolved from there, but it was based on Joomla. The retail site was on Joomla. That's unrelated to the app that Watchful users use every day and that you're looking at on the shared screen.
Oh, okay.
And it
So
was
if you log into Watchful, this is not a Joomla site in front of us. Joomla is the retail marketing sales site.
correct, and that's part of that is also now WordPress. Our blog is on WordPress there. So this is actually an Angular app that we've got. It does connect to some of our Joomla backend. We still run our users through Joomla. Although probably as we progress, we're kind of slowly rewriting some of the Joomla fragments and converting it to complete standalone. So we're balancing that with kind of new feature development. So yeah, it's Angular on top of some Joomla backend, and then of course a whole master backend application that runs all the scheduling. Watchful in its kind of most base form is a scheduling program that schedules all the tasks that you need done, from checking backups to uptime to um, you know eh, logging changes on your site, looking for intrusion, that sort of thing. So it's basically one master task manager at its heart. And so we're trying to present that to you in a way that's pleasing and helpful and saves you time and money. That's of course the whole point of Watchful.
Oh, okay.
And
So
it's all go ahead, Steve.
it's kind of like a visual interface on like an Uptime Monitor, a security checker, a Joomla site extension updater. It's like a visual interface on all these scheduling management tools.
That's right. And we started out at a local hosting company in Chicago. I call it local because it's pretty close. But we moved to AWS, Amazon Web Services, about 2.5 years ago, maybe three. And that's actually all those services are now delivered from European servers in Ireland and Frankfurt. And so the only real
Huh.
US kind of
Well,
item that we're using. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I was gonna ask why. Why would you move all your servers to Europe?
Yeah, I think we were thinking about just general privacy issues. So the only real U.S. item we have right now is our billing. Um, that's through Recurly, which some of you who might have used. So they're really not so innovative, but they're really good at what they do in terms of recurring billing. But everything else in terms of storing site data and all that stuff, it's all overseas, closer to Europe. Um, and I think the idea was to make it more central globally, maybe, but also, and we have a lot of customers. Our primary user base is, if you combine France, Netherlands, and Germany, that's probably 60% of our users. So it also made sense in terms of a little bit of speed. At that time, we weren't using the highest tier database availability that AWS now has. And so about a year ago, we migrated to a whole new database application that Amazon offers. It's basically like edge computing, but for databases, so that whether or not you're in the States or Australia or Europe, you're using probably using a database that's physically closer to you, which when we built the AWS rollout initially wasn't available.
Oh, okay. We've been involved recently in moving quite a few people off Amazon for pure website hosting. Amazon hosting ends up getting pretty expensive and difficult to manage for a pure website, but you found it to be a much better option for an app for a service rather than just a regular website. It's been a good choice for the app.
I think it's been a good choice. It does offer some complexity, and so we have an IT manager who takes care of those things for us. It can be quite complicated, but things like automated backup and database restoration and repair, those are high-end things that you're not needing for, like, say, a brochure site, or even a medium-sized business site wouldn't necessarily need that kind of stability, I guess you'd say. You asked me what it's like to run a SaaS service on Joomla. Because our customers are global, it's a 24/7, 365 kind of operation, and stability is probably the most important feature after good scheduling, and those two things are interrelated. But yeah, having high stability is critical for us.
So what does Watchful do? You said the core of the service is scheduling tasks. What kind of tasks? What would someone see if they logged into a screen like this on the Watchful dashboard? What could they do?
Right. So I'll just give you a little background. This is a testing area that we have when we originally made it for making explainer videos and promotional videos so that you could actually have a real interface. It's evolved over time. We use it for quite a bit of testing, but you can see we've got 10 demo sites for Joomla. We've got 10 WordPress sites, and then a couple other things we're playing with down here. But we essentially have each site in here the way a customer might, or a regular website builder, in this case a Joomla user, and so they would have their site listed. This is just a basic layout. Is a site being monitored? So you could disable notifications, for example. Is there a backup schedule? Yes. When was the last backup?
Hold on.
This is saying my backups are stale, so I probably don't want to run an update right now. There are 11 updates available. I'm just focusing on this site number 2 here. It's up, so that's the Uptime Monitor. It's connected normally to Watchful, and that's the core version number. On the far right here, we've got a bunch of tags. So there are pro plugins installed. This actually has been configured to detect malware. So we've got a malware script to test our malware checker. I've got some auto updates applied. Willie is our service technician, our imaginary service technician. SiteGround is our imaginary host. They've got a platinum care plan. So you can see these are ideas that we imagine our agency is using. So tags are a very important part of this. I just wanted to point out one thing. This is a default testing kind of layout, but you can actually click this button here and change and add as much or as little information as you want. So maybe I want there to only be 10 sites shown at a time. I want to order them by how many updates are needed in descending order. I want my sites that are most out of date on top. And I can get rid of things like, yeah, I know it's monitored. I know it's connected. Those are always the same for me. I don't need to know the core update necessarily. And let's just leave, and the CMS, maybe I don't care about that. Okay. So now if I click save here, okay, I'm going to get a customized interface. You can see it's a lot cleaner. It's pre-sorted by sites that need updates. So you can see this kitten blog has 17 updates available. That's important for me, for example. So that's kind of the basic interface. And then what it does, if you click into any one of these, I'm going to go into Alliterator's Anonymous here, a very cleverly named site title. And you basically see all the tools listed. And we call this the drawer. Okay, so when you open the drawer, you see the tools. Basically, you can run a remote install if you needed to apply an application that wasn't covered otherwise in Watchful, like natively. Maybe you have a custom application you like to use or a custom script you want to run. You can run it from there. You can click the updater and view all the things that need to be updated. You can click update all to update everything, or you can just update one at a time. You can enable auto updates so that it would update for you automatically.
So
Critically, go ahead, Steve.
I know you guys just added auto updates recently, so you can basically set your Joomla sites or WordPress sites to just automatically update themselves in the background. How's that gone? Have you had a lot of broken sites, or has it been a pretty reliable process? Have people been enabling it safely?
It has been, but I think it's for and we suggested this when we announced the feature, that people are going to do this in Joomla. In the Joomla world, I think people do this for the softwares they trust the most, the Akiba products, the No Numbers, the JCEs, maybe the Perfect Web extensions you can see down here, Regular Labs. Sorry, it's not No Number anymore. People will auto update those. Other things that are more niche or less tested, perhaps, people will do that manually. Or things that don't update as much. Also, some people might choose some sites to never auto update. So you can auto update on I can set on this site, Heavenly HVAC. I can say, okay, I want to auto update JCal. Okay, I'm going to enable auto update there. It shows. But then when I come back to my site 2, it's not auto updated. So people can individually choose. Some sites are more fickle, and we can't determine that for people. People know their customers, they know their sites, and they can make those choices for themselves.
So I'm not sure how many of you guys noticed, I suspect most of you, that there was a Joomla core update this week. In fact, there were 2, which is, it's not abnormal for Joomla to release one update and then go, oh man, we forgot something or broke something. And
It's
then
called
release
the Joomla. It's called the Joomla double tap, Steve.
So, Joomla update 1, like 5 hours later, Joomla update 2.
Yeah.
So, what would someone do if they were using Watchful and they suddenly had, I don't know, 50, 60 Joomla sites to suddenly update to the new version in here?
Yeah, that's a good answer, and I can come back to some of these other tools later. But what a lot of people will do is, for example, they say, okay, I've got, they might have sites listed as, let's just pick one of these. Let's say John. I just clicked if you notice, I clicked the tag, and it auto sorted my list for every tag that has John. So maybe I know that John's sites that he's in charge of, he's a beginner, junior dev at my agency. So I've given him all the sites that never break when they're updated. So he knows that he can go in and auto update all of these, or update them all in bulk, and there's not going to be any problems. So I've just sorted my list by a tag. He can mass select them, or he can select them individually, however he chooses, he or she, of course. And then he can click the installer button or the updater button. In this case, he clicks the updater. This is now just showing those sites, and he can say, okay, Joomla, let's update all of the Joomlas. Or he can say, let's pick JCal Pro. There's only one JCal Pro. But if there was 10, let's update them all.
That's a super reliable extension. It's never going to have any problems updating that one. That's right. A Joomla Shack extension for people who don't know.
So yeah, so people use the mass updater quite a bit. So it's very common that, okay, I really trust Akiba Backup Professional for Joomla. That's probably this one. Okay, I can take all of these, update them all, go grab a coffee. That'll take 2-3 minutes, and then it will push through updates for all of that. And I can process, this list is sorted by updates that are existing. How many K2s? I've got 3 K2s. I trust that. I'm going to update all of those. Once I've done my bulk updating, I might return to my dashboard. Let me clear out the filters here. And am I clearing out my tags?
Do you see a enormous spike in traffic when these updates come? When a Joomla update comes, do you see a flood of people coming to Watchful and saying, okay, I need to start running all my updates?
Yeah, Joomla updates, again, Akiba, Regular Labs, SP Page Builder, which we just launched support for SP Page Builder Pro. You can auto update, but also bulk update the Pro version now from Watchful, which is great. I think we'll be talking about that in the blog later today or tomorrow. Those top extensions, those top plugins, those are the ones that drive the traffic. In particular, the core, that any kind of popular core or plugin that has a security fix. So the most recent Joomla had 3 low priority fixes included in the release. So that generated definitely a spike in activity.
Okay, so you can look at your traffic and you can see spikes. Okay, Akiba has a release, Admin Tools has a release, Joomla has a release, JCE Editor has a release. There are spikes as soon as one of those updates comes. People log in and update all their sites.
Yeah, and when there's critical security issues, and Joomla hasn't had one of those for a while, at least a couple of years. When there are critical security issues, it also gives a bump in signups to the site. Also, people who are new to Joomla and realize they should be trying to get on top of this a little more.
Question from Andy: can you create white label reports to send out to clients?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, and we're going to do something you should never do, and that's do a live demo of a new feature. So there's a reporting option.
It's your
over
birthday.
here.
What can go wrong?
That's right.
It's going to work. It's your birthday.
So if you look at our documentation right now, because this literally came out 26 minutes ago, 1 minute before this call, this is not the interface you would see. So basically, in the past, you could click a new report button. Say I want to do a report on my HVAC site. I would choose a date range, the content that I wanted, which right now is Google Analytics, Uptime, and logs.
Okay, so this would be a report including Google Analytics traffic data, uptime showing any downtime or uptime the site has had in the last month or so. And then logs would be, what would you find in the logs?
Logs are anything that and I'll go back to the dashboard and show you, but like, was a new extension installed? Was your backup, was it successfully completed? Was there any change in your IP address or your MySQL version on your web server? Kind of the major indicators that your site has been getting maintenance and may or may not have had an intrusion event. For instance,
Okay,
if you had a change in your template index file, that will be in the logs, and that would be a serious indication that somebody changed something. If it wasn't you or one of your staff, was that an intrusion event, right?
Oh, okay. So the reports, you can package up traffic data, uptime data, and also any changes that have happened to the site.
Correct. And we're expanding this. What's new today, so this is basically what it was for the last little while. What's new recently is that you've been able to save profiles. So you can see these saved ones down here. So you weren't able to save them before. So now you can save them so you don't have to regenerate them. If I want to come back and grab this Joomla.org, I can just grab it down, a PDF right there. I don't have to reselect everything. So that was new last week or 2 weeks ago. Today, what's new is you can schedule these. So I want to maybe send a quarterly report to my client. I can pick what quarterly frequency I prefer. Do I start in January, February, or March? I like to send it on the first of the month at, let's say, 10 a.m., 10:05 to make it look like I'm not a robot. Select the items and then save the report profile. So if I do this for Heavenly HVAC, which doesn't exist, let's find out what happens. Here we go. I have the option. I can just leave the default name, or I can say, profile 2. And then I get a new item down here, and you notice the interface is the same. You get a drawer to open up, and I can either send a test email or download the PDF directly. So
okay. So the customer would get a PDF in their email inbox.
Currently, it's sent to you, the Watchful account owner. But yeah, probably next week or the week after, we'll have it sending out to your clients from there instead. So that's where that's going.
You better
so now
look at it first, yeah.
What's that?
You better look at it first.
Exactly. Well, that's why we created the send test. We created this button, send test email, to actually preview the results. But then we said probably people are going to want to preview these before they just send them directly. So it turned out it was a testing feature at the beginning. We turned out to just release it because we knew people would want to preview them.
That's a good idea. Good idea, Dorothy. So if you send quarterly reports, maybe you send all the reports to yourself on the first of the month. You read through them all, make sure there's no bad data or like traffic changes, and then schedule the quarterly reports to send to the customer on the second of the month.
Yeah,
after you've had time
to at least be able to answer the questions you're going to get, if not fix anything.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I think it's going to be kind of like the auto updates. If you have a simple site that never has any problems, we expect people to be sending out regular reports automatically to their customers without any review. For complicated sites, you're probably going to want to make a profile, and then rather than schedule it, just so you see there's a schedule tab. If I could just click, again, this joomla.org, this isn't scheduled, but I can go in here, change the date range, and just download the PDF, inspect it, send it out manually. So you can kind of customize this based on the client and the site that you're dealing with.
Yeah, back when we were doing agency work, we used to have some tools like this that would do automated reports for SEO, for example. And particularly for the bigger customers, it seemed a little impersonal to email just a PDF directly to them. So we would always get the PDF emailed to us, and then we'd write a little bit of context and a bit of explanation to help them understand what they were seeing and send the report on the next day.
On our roadmap is to have a custom field where you could put in a custom message. And so how that works, do you want to do it each time? Do you want to add a custom note in the log, which then just gets mixed in with all the other log data that you're sending? Again, you're going to have to make it unique for your customer. But yeah, I'm excited to where this is going, and it's one of the highest value features we have in Watchful. So we've been careful to put a fair bit of time in it. We do a lot of work on the wireframing, then the testing, of course, and I'm glad today that this new feature didn't break as I'm showing it to the world right now.
Can you tell us anything about what it provides from Google Analytics?
Yeah, currently, these sites, because they're demo sites behind a firewall, don't really have any traffic data to show you. But basically, it's the standard stock report that you would get from Google Analytics. And if I've got a preview that I can show you on our knowledge base that's going to say it a lot better than it's going to show it a lot better than I can explain it. So if you look out at the reports, it'll just give you a little overview. So I'm going to zoom in here. I think you can see. So the Google Analytics shows you the basic traffic data, visits, page views, pages per visit, bounce rate, average time on site, and new visits. It also shows you your top pages, your main sources of traffic, and your keywords. Although keywords, again, is not really, most of the data these days is not provided, but and then here's the uptime data that you would notice with any of your uptime events listed, and then your log data. Apologize here for the quality. This is just a preview image for the page header on this page, but yeah. And if you want a little more information on that, you can have a look at the white label report video we have. And I'll just post this link for you in the chat if anyone's interested. But as we've been developing kind of a lot more the last 18 months, some of these videos are getting slightly out of date. So next up for me, once we get our Xcloner website sorted out, which is recently, we just purchased a backup plugin for WordPress, we'll be coming back and revamping our videos to make sure they're in sync with the new features that we have.
Vic, got a question from Ahmed. He asks, can Watchful monitor outdated extensions to prevent any possible hacks?
Yeah, currently we don't track the data from the vulnerability, the Watchful vulnerability tracker that Joomla has. So not specifically. If it's a profile that, like a signature, malware signature, we can detect that. But basically, if it's outdated and it has no updates, you're gonna have to keep a little bit of track on that manually. And so, every Joomla site maintainer should be subscribing to the vulnerability extension list anyway. But that's an idea that we have on our roadmap for a while. But we've been focusing more. Our clients appear to be more interested in agency type tasks, less so than hardcore security tasks. So folks that are having real big security problems, they're probably using another service, a Scurry, for example, to be monitoring and de-hacking. The other thing that a lot of our customers are using is Cloudflare, which can intercept and kind of basically soft patch those vulnerabilities in real time via DNS. So again, I think it's kind of dropped on the priority level for us a little. Not that it's not important, but catering more to our current audience, at least I would say.
So Watchful can tell you when extensions are out of date and it can also update them for you automatically or manually. It just won't link that with, say, vulnerability data.
Not yet, but it's an important note that are people using extensions that haven't been updated. So we detect updates when they get reported in the back end of their Joomla sites. That comes into all the sites we manage. It comes in, we aggregate it all and make sure everyone knows that a new version is available. If a new version is not available, it's kind of, everyone's a little blind, right? We don't get any ping, we don't get any notification that it's out of date necessarily, except that the last update may be quite old, and the Joomla extension directory tracks that also, last updated. If you're using an extension that's completely abandoned, I mean, that's another kind of business decision that users need to be thinking about, but not something we track. But I'm going to make a note of it because I do like that idea. Last updated when.
So I know in the past we've worked with you to help you support like Joomla Shack extension updates. You guys have like a license key system, because I know updating commercial pro extensions is difficult. You guys have a kind of license key system where people can make sure all their commercial stuff is up to date?
Yeah, this is one of our kind of unique selling points, I guess you might say. And if we go into our settings, I'm going to be scrolling through this kind of quickly because those are
those real license keys. Can I grab them?
Those are real license keys. So don't pause the video.
I'll edit them out in post-production.
And so I didn't really get in to show you that because those are our real codes that we use for testing all the time. Basically, it's easier for me just to demonstrate. If I go into this site and I want to look at the updater, you can see we've got a number of pro extensions, right? We've got OS Map Pro, JCal Pro, okay? And we're gonna find out in real time if this has the most recent update key that we're testing. You can maybe see this tiny subtle progress bar going at the top. Okay, update went fine. That's a pro extension. Akiba has a pro license.
That worked out well for both of us. Your birthday luck is holding.
And here's the Perfect Web Team SEO package. So you can see that the pro updates go along with free updates. This is the Watchful client, so let's presume that works fine. I'm not going to do the Joomla one. It's a little more time consuming. But yeah, so you can set those to auto update. You just put your download key in the settings that I briefly glossed over here, and it will take care of those things. And I just want to point out that if you look at our blog, we've kind of been recommitting ourselves to making sure that the extensions people are using are supported, the pro extensions, the premium ones, and the commercial ones, I guess, as we say in Joomla. So we just added SP Page Builder. We added Tasso's extensions recently, Your Simple Web right before that. So it's been nice to recommit and kind of add some of those things that have kind of become popular in the last couple of years as we've also started supporting WordPress. Joomla's continued and there's been lots of activity. So I was glad to add some of those. And if folks out there have professional plugins that use a reasonably standard update system, and we'll work with the vendor to determine that, please do send me a note or send Steve a note, and we'll work to get those in the back end so you don't have to be manually updating those things. The other thing about having your license key in a central location like Watchful is that you don't have to have them on your remote site where your clients might take them and use them themselves, for example.
Oh, okay. So the license key only needs to be entered once into Watchful. Even if you have 100 sites, you don't have to enter the license key in any of those individual sites.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, we individually authenticate. So if Bill, I don't know if there's a Bill on the call, just random Bill, puts in his code for JCal Pro, that really great extension. If he does that, Sue with her separate account doesn't get the pro updates from Bill's license code. So we make sure that every time we do an update, it takes the license code, authenticates it for that user, and moves forward. We don't give that person's license code or share access to those softwares to another user who hasn't entered their own code.
Was someone trying to chip in with a question there? Okay, question from Anne. Okay, Anne's question is, can you ask why certain vendors are not showing updates with Watchful? I don't want to name names unless you want me to. Oh yeah, please do.
I
So,
can answer without names. There's a couple
okay.
answers, and I'm happy to jump in there. So we have a security system in our updates that manages or integrates with our updates, so that people don't try to hijack the update system and maybe send you an update from it doesn't. What we're trying to prevent with our security system, specifically relating to updates, is that we don't want someone to publish an extension with the same name as the one you're using and try and send you some kind of use that as a vector to send you malware, for example.
That's a bit technical and even a little beyond my technical understanding. But I remember a similar discussion in the WordPress world that WordPress itself was sending out core updates in a way in which the updates could be intercepted and malware could be um, interjected into the WordPress core updates, and they had to think very carefully about how they were sending out their updates and make some changes. And
Yeah,
so Watchful, I guess, is thinking along the same lines.
Well, security is one. I said that the most important part of Watchful was that it's a scheduler. The actual true most important part is that we sell trust. And if you don't trust us, you're not going to be confident to use this platform. So we know that's super important. We considered changing our domain name completely a while back, but we thought it would have too much of an impact on trust. So we didn't go that direction. But talking about updates, let me simplify it to say that because we're thinking carefully about security, sometimes an extension which has been failing and can't update because perhaps the vendor had an outage on his website, perhaps the vendors walked away from the plugin for whatever reason. Sometimes a plugin can't be updated, an extension, and so its update actually sometimes gets disabled, and that's part of our security issues. So if you ever see something like that and you're a Watchful user, or doesn't matter if you're a Watchful user, I guess, but if you think a plugin an extension should be visible in the updater and it's not, drop us a note. Probably it got turned off as a security under suspicion of a security issue, and we'd rather be overly cautious in that area and then go back and manually check if there's an issue. So one, if you know it should be there because you see it in the website backend, but you don't see it in Watchful, just drop us a note. We can take care of that quickly. The second is for premium extensions. If you use like Akiba subscriptions or the Joomla update system in your extension, we can generally support you, but we have to manually do it. So we reach out to, I think we have 35 or 40 different vendors that we work with currently, then we support their premium extensions. Todd, I did mention Akiba subscriptions, but even if that's discontinued, a lot of people are still using that kind of software.
It's funny. Akiba subscriptions was probably ended 5, 6, 7 years ago, and it's still the most popular way for Joomla vendors to sell their license keys.
Right. So in short, if there's a pro subscription that's not supported, put us in touch, let us know, and we will reach out. We've kind of perfected the ability to add vendors. For a while, that wasn't the case at Watchful, but in the last year, we've really ramped that up and made it a good, reliable system. So please reach out. We'll get it in there. And I'll just note something that Sue mentioned. Occasionally, there might be something your server's doing or your firewall's doing to block updates. That can also be a factor. We have a troubleshooting document about that on our knowledge base. You can just look up whitelisting on our knowledge base and you'll find that pretty quick. That could also be a factor, but I think these days that's less of an issue. It's usually there was an outage on the vendor's site that made us be overly cautious and we turned off their updates for a short time. And we review that automatically every, I think, 10 days. And then the other one is manually supporting a new, like Tassos is a good example. Your Simple Web is another good example. Those are folks that weren't really on my radar maybe 3 years ago, but they're quite popular extensions these days. And so someone reached out. I think they reached out directly and we just put it together and got them sorted out. So yeah, if you see something in your website backend that you don't see in Watchful, you should let us know and we'll get it fixed.
Okay, I got a question from Morris for you. Can this also check versions of PHP and MySQL?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll pull up our Kitten blog here. And if you look over in this area, so basically we have a tools area we have an info area, and then kind of a server website area over here. And so you can see that there's an IP address, the URL, the PHP, current PHP version, the current MySQL version, and the current web server version. The notes here is manually populated. If I click the edit button, I can add some notes. Okay. Oh, just because I'm in here, you can also, if you have a development site or a site that's on a private network, you can, if it's using basic authentication, you can put in your credentials and make sure it's managed by Watchful. Anyway, we track, we have something called an early warning audit. And so every 3 hours we scan your site and we look for maybe a couple dozen indicators of potential indicators of intrusion. And one of them is if your PHP or MySQL or Apache versions have changed. So we track those in our database. And when there's a change, we let you know. We also, again, we track the IP address. We track your primary index.php files and your templates and things like that, where places where intruders would be looking to come in and try and find a vector to get access to your data or your site or your server. So the answer is yes, we track that.
I got a slightly related question from Sue. And Sue, feel free to jump in to explain this question more if you want. Her question was about the scanning for malware. Do you have any thoughts on the reliability of automatic malware scans? Does it produce a large number of false positives? I know as a extension developer and a WordPress plugin developer, we quite often get false positives from other people scanning our site, whether it's Securi or Cloudware or WordFence in the WordPress world, and they've often picked up on something silly that really isn't an actual problem with our software. How do you deal with that? If you're running automatic security scanners, do you automatically have to wade through a lot of false positives?
So we don't run automatic security scans, and part of the reason is, a big part of the reason is the false positive issue. Also, our target demographic are not folks who are probably comfortable identifying false positives or repairing positive hits on a security audit. So we do an outside-in scan. We integrate with Securi for that directly, and then we do an inside-out scan where we scan the file system directly. And we very carefully selected, very very common signatures that are almost always going to be accurate. Expanding to produce a full system. I know some of our competitors have full, detailed site scanners. They're also selling repair services. So, frankly, I'm personally torn on that whole process. So let's step back from the web world. You go to your doctor. The doctor says you're sick. By the way, I'm selling you the cure also. I know that's how the system works, and we kind of want it to work that way. But I always feel like there's a part of that that's it's almost like a conflict of interest, that the person identifying the disease is also curing the disease. And so I always go back and forth, and I haven't resolved this problem, so I have the answer. But I'm hesitant to go down that path where I'm scaring you with oh my God, there's a problem. Oh, by the way, I'll fix it for you if you pay me. So I don't know what the right answer is on that, but it has given us a lot of pause. And pushed us to other areas like the reports I was pointing out, the auto updates, things that more of our current customers are really using and relying on us for.
So we use Watchful to update our sites, and we also use Securi, which is now a GoDaddy company, and we use them for the actual firewall. And I think the way they get around this is by having a flat fee for the year. And so this is kind of circling back to Sue's questions, that to Sue's original question about false positives, that if Securi throws out too many false positives, then that's going to cost them time and effort because they're going to have to track them down and solve them for us. It's not going to cost us extra each time a false positive is thrown out. I think we pay them maybe like $200 a year, $20 a month for the firewall and security scanning and fixing as well. It's all in one package. So that's our setup here at Joomla Shack, at least. We use Watchful for the maintenance services, and then a security front end for the firewall, and also, and this has never happened yet, but also as a possible recovery service in case we got hacked.
I'm knocking on my wooden desk for you, Steve.
I've got your birthday luck. Things will keep on going well.
That's right. Good question. I've struggled with it, frankly, and yeah, we'll see. And I mean, as we expand into other areas like WordPress, this is another consideration since we've done that. There's so many people in that security space. Is that an area we can compete in and not take, say, venture capital money or investor money? I'm not sure about the answer to that either. And I would rather not get investors if I could help it. And a lot, how am I going to compete against GoDaddy, in the security space? I mean, that's another reason to pause and think carefully about, what this business is, what it does, what we can do well, and what we can't do well. And, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be something we're not. So despite my personal reservations, there are some true business challenges to competing with some of those big companies,
So, Vic, you actually ended up making a big business decision in the last couple of weeks or so. You ended up buying a backup plugin.
Yeah, that's right. So we it's our second kind of major financial investment in the last 18 months, and I bring that up to let the listeners know and the people on this call know that we're committed. We're investing our money into Watchful, and so first we bought out our partners, our original co-founders from Switzerland, and that was a year and a half ago. And so now we've bought this backup plugin. Met a very nice young man online, but I eventually went to meet him in person. I didn't want to get involved with someone who I didn't know, hadn't met, hadn't had a meal with. So it's a young man named Ovi Liutza, who's in Romania. And we actually have a longtime staff member from Romania also, so I was happy to get over there.
This must have been pre-coronavirus, flying all the way over to Romania.
Just exactly like a week before. It was really, really good timing. And so, yeah, we bought the plugin as, I was saying on another podcast I was recording earlier today that we didn't buy it to all of a sudden come up with a premium backup plugin, which in the WordPress world, at least, is very common. Buy something free, slap a premium tag on a couple features and try and milk the audience. Our goal is to kind of have more users in general, because that allows us to serve all our customers better with more staff and more services and more features. That's kind of the goal there. So that was primarily to get a little bit of a foothold in the WordPress market. I think Xcloner was the 8th in the top 10 backup plugins. I think it was number 8 when we closed the deal. But yeah, we also wanted to have something that we could rely on and continue to develop and add some value to. And by having at least for the WordPress side, having a backup plugin, it means we can do some interesting and tighter integrations, which we can't do with a third-party backup, like with Akiba, for example. Akiba is great. We love it. But we can only get so close to it. So on the WordPress side, we saw this opportunity to hopefully add some really interesting, neat features while maintaining it as a completely free and I want to say military grade encryption level backup solution on the WordPress side. So folks are using, I know there's a Joomla user group, but if some of you have WordPress sites, which I know some of you do, it's a pretty solid backup option.
Okay, question from Tristina. Does the Xcloner backup work with Joomla too?
That's a good question, Tristina. If you go to the website, there is an old download for Joomla, which does work, by the way. But I still recommend, if you're using Joomla, to stay with Akiba. It's great.
Yeah, Akiba, I guarantee if we ask 100% of people on this call, 99% of them would say they're using Akiba for their backups.
Ian asked a great question. WordPress is this plucky little blog, Ian. You can forget about it. It's not important.
Yeah, the question was, what is this WordPress thing he keeps on talking about? Anyone know?
Yeah, we want to know.
Forget about it. It will never be relevant to any of you guys. What is this Akiba thing everyone keeps on talking about? So Vic, at the moment, we're talking about Joomla, all Joomla users on here. So the moment, if you want to back up your Joomla sites, Akiba is the option. And you can, I guess, log into different parts of the Watchful dashboard and set Akiba to automatically back up your site like once a day or once a week or something.
Yeah, sure. Let me just show you quick. Where's our O2 here? Well, it doesn't really matter which one, I guess, but all right, I've limited my pages to 10 here because I changed it up. So
okay, if anyone mentions WordPress again, I'm going to kick you out of the chat. This is a Joomla only talk.
If you go into your settings, and there's a couple secret keys I'll scroll past here. Yeah, so there's a backup area, and you can choose your backup. So if you have a Joomla site, it's Akiba Backup Pro all the way, and you can choose if you have multiple profiles, you can select them. And again, here's our task scheduler, of course, daily, weekly, monthly, or never. And what time of day you like to back up. Most people, of course, do the backups at night. Akiba on big sites can really...
Dude, can you explain that? Why would people want to do all their backups at night?
Yeah, and I was just about to say that if you have a large so let me back up. Any backup software, because it's copying...
Let me back up.
Yeah. Sorry. Dad joke central here. Any archiving process on your website is going to be CPU intense because it's going to copy every file to some other file and compress it. So it's a CPU intense process. So if you have a large site that's going to create a large backup file, it can impact the resources available to people trying to actually view your website. So you want to do that generally when you have the lowest traffic. For most people, that's at night when folks are sleeping. So most people will do that in the evening, depending on their time zone of where most people are visiting their website.
Yeah, I remember. Several years ago, we used to take Akiba backups, and our site was fairly big, and things were a little more difficult back in those days, and our site would actually start to get real slow and even occasionally go offline because Akiba was processing all these enormous chunks of information and sending it off to a backup location.
So the first version of Watchful was a Joomla site with a Joomla component installed, and Akiba was doing its backups, and it would do incremental backups during the week, and every Sunday night it would do a full backup, and our site would go down every Sunday night, and we'd all be scrambling and getting out of bed and trying to fix things, and it took that's when we really started thinking about, and we haven't talked about work-life balance at all, but that's super important to me, and I try to make it with my Watchful team. I let them know that it's important, and I respect their time. I don't want to be calling them at night. So having a super stable platform that doesn't go down, is also very, very important. And we spend quite a bit of money every month making sure that folks don't have to get out of bed at 3 a.m. to fix something very often. So yeah, run your backups at your low traffic time. That's what I recommend. We also have, this is new in the last couple of weeks, a stale backup warning, so that if your, in this case, if your backup is older than 3 days, you're going to get a notification saying, hey, your backup's at a date. So we have some other plans for this coming up, but for now, it's basically letting you know that you should have your backups done, and you can customize what stale means by obviously changing this number. But what this allows you to do, and I don't know if we effectively can communicate this to our Watchful customers or not, but basically when you go in to do Watchful maintenance, you want your backups ready when you log in. You don't want to log in and then have to wait for the backup. If you ask me, that's not as efficient. So we put this in here so that when you do go to do your maintenance, your backups are ready and you can just go. And if you break something, no problem, your backup's already current.
Okay, so Vic, we're getting towards the end, and I don't want to keep you too long on your birthday. And so we're also getting some quite a few questions popping in the chat. So I'm going to run through some questions. Question from Wesley. Have you given any thought to offering 2 backup schedules so agencies can send copies to a different server on a different schedule? I presume perhaps sending like a database backup to Dropbox in the morning, and then maybe sending a whole site backup to Amazon storage in the afternoon.
Correct. That's what I remember.
Yeah, we have that is on a roadmap. In fact, the question is, or what we're trying to, what we've been thinking about is how many backups are, you want 2, but somebody else wants 3, somebody else wants 5. I'm not quite sure what the answer to that is, but yes, it is on our roadmap. So the answer to that's simply yes.
Cool. Question from Sue. I have some Rocket theme templates. They really don't offer a template update integration. Is there any way that Watchful could have, I guess, a deeper Rocket theme integration? Could you at least report the template version so we have a flag so we can have an alert for a template update?
That's a good question. I thought that was in our extensions list, but I can see it's not there. Yeah, we actually spoke with Rocket Theme a while back, and I think even Steve, when you bought Joomla Shack, we discussed coming up with support for a theme updater. And for me, what would be critical in a theme updater, a template updater, would be doing a diff so that you knew if your existing template had changes. And I'm heard Andy Miller's on the podcast next week. I mean, I would love to circle back with Andy on that. When we talked with him about it maybe 3 years back, I think it was a kind of a not so interested right now in maybe developing that. And Joomla doesn't offer it either. So sustainability becomes difficult if everyone has their own update system. I like the idea of it. If there
come and join us next week. Andy Miller will be our guest on next week's user group, and we can bug him about that.
I think it requires more talk, but it is certainly important. And having those backups helps with that a little. At least if you do update and your backups are current, you can roll back. But yeah, I mean, theme updates are important. We also don't do them for WordPress currently either. Oh, I'm out of the chat. See you guys. Because I mentioned WordPress, Steve.
Like an ejection seat. Yeah. I will beep out all the WordPress mentions in post-production.
There's a question about cloud services, so I'll just address that quickly. If you set up your Akiba profile to send the file to, say, AWS, then that's exactly what it will do. We are not telling, if I go into the edit again.
So you would set the Amazon destination in the original website. There would be
Correct.
Like an Akiba backup profile on the original website, and Watchful would just trigger that profile.
Correct. And if I'm not mistaken, let's have a look at the backups, the just list of backups. It will tell you in the archive name if it's remote, I believe. But yeah, so it will certainly, if your backup's done, it will appear in your list, and just like all of the other ones. And so, yeah, it's certainly, it tells you what profile it's in. So if you have a profile that sends it to a third-party cloud storage, then that's exactly what will happen. Yep.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to give Vic, I have one final question for you. And while Vic is answering, feel free to drop any other final questions you guys have in the chat. Vic, do you have anything that you're working on or something you have on Watchful already that is super cool, something that you're really proud of? Like, I'm delighted that we were able to build that. That's an excellent feature. What's one thing that's super cool about Watchful?
I think the auto updater is super awesome, big time saver. And the way we've implemented it, where you can individually choose which extensions are going to auto update and which ones are not on a per site basis. I'm really proud of that. I mean, I think, Steve, you said at one point, 3, 4, 5 years ago, plug-in and extension auto updates are the future, just like on your iPhone. And we're almost there in many of the cases with Joomla and other CMSs that will go unnamed. And I think that's been the biggest thing, that when you log in now to many of our clients, when they log into their dashboard, most of the updates that they need are done. And so they can focus on the other tasks. Is the site, is the content up to date? Is the SEO working? Are my backups current? And they're not just sitting there, oh, I've got 10 updates that I've kind of been worrying about, but the trusted vendors are now getting up to date, and they can focus on the problematic ones, instead of having to worry about the non-problematic ones. So I'd say the auto updater, I'm really liking where the reports are going. And I can't say much more than we've already said on the blog, but there's some really super cool things that I will be proud to tell you the next time I'm on your podcast. Next time I'm on your user group.
Hey, we'll have you back for your next birthday.
There you go. Perfect. It'll be the big 5-0, Steve. So it's a big one.
Oh, I got
the next one's the big one.
I got through the whole user group without asking how old you were, and you just threw it out there at the end.
I outed myself.
Well, awesome. Thanks, Vic.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
So
thank you.
Thank you.
So
Thank you very much.
So Vic, you are being followed over the next couple of weeks by 2 Joomla co-founders. For those of you guys who like to come to these user groups, we have 2 of Joomla's original founders coming up in the next couple of weeks. Next week, we have Andy Miller from Rocket Theme and Gantry and Grav and the original Joomla admin template and many other things. And then the week after, we have Johan Janssens, who was really the main architect of Joomla 1.5 and now runs Joomla Tools. So those should be really cool user groups. I hope you guys have a great week, and I hope to see you guys again next week when we have Andy Miller from Rocket Theme.